We're fearlessly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to Connecticut.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Thursday afternoon edition, Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. It's June, but there was weirdly a lot going on this week, and we are here to discuss it all. It was a busy week across college sports, and we're going to dive into all of it. We're going to open ACC-SEC Challenge games were announced. We got Carolina, Kentucky, Duke, Florida, Louisville, Arkansas. A lot of intriguing matchups. We'll get to some of those, what you need to know, all of that good stuff. Also, on top of it, did you see this? Arkansas and Kentucky, the Calipari Bowl, only happening once. It was the most intense matchup of last offseason, only happening once. I think the SEC dropped the ball. We're going to discuss that. From there, Arkansas picked up a player on Thursday afternoon, a Euro big man. We are going to go ahead and dive into that. And then an interesting football recruiting news. We don't talk a ton of football recruiting, but BYU, yeah, we just had Kevin Young on, BYU basketball coach. Are they going to get the number one uncommitted quarterback in high school football? Everything's coming up BYU of late. We'll discuss all of that busy show. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. One, make sure you're subscribed to Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. We are not slowing down. New clips, new videos going up every single day. We have just had some of the best interviews across college sports. Kevin Young, BYU basketball coach, joined us this week. Will Wade last week. AJ DeBonsa back in late May. If you're not subscribed, make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify as well. A little bit of a housekeeping note. We have, in addition to the interview, started our college hoops offseason grade series. We've done Louisville. We've done UConn. We've done Florida. We're going to do all the big ones going forward. Kentucky, North Carolina, NC State, BYU, St. John's, Arizona, on and on. We have a separate tab on YouTube. Those will also get up on the podcast feed, so make sure that you're subscribed. And kind of speaking of housekeeping notes, we will be running a lot of those in late June. I'm actually going on vacation next week, so June 9th. I'll be here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We're going to have a full show Monday, a full show Wednesday. But come Friday, I'm on vacation for that last week of June, so you'll have plenty of college hoops off-season grades to get you through. I'll get back. It's July, and it will be full speed ahead with college football, people. With that said, oh, buddy, it is a busy week across college sports. There's no more time to waste. Let's get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day. This is a big one. So listen, first of all, I just want to say this because I'm getting, Torres, whatever. Bottom line is we're going to have so much news from about mid-July on. It's a little bit of a quieter time. But the one thing I will say, college hoop scheduling, it feels like every couple days there's something interesting to discuss. And on Wednesday afternoon, we officially got, via John Rothstein, the ACC-SEC Challenge games, okay? So bottom line, I think if you're watching a show like this, especially in June, you know how it works. But the ACC-SEC Challenge, this is like the third, fourth year that they've done it. When the SEC got rid of the Big Ten, got the SEC exclusively, they put together a challenge. There's been some really intriguing games. These games are always played in late November, early December. I was actually at the game a few years ago when Arkansas hosted Duke. That was one of the best atmospheres that I've ever been at. Duke had Auburn last year, a couple other intriguing ones. Alabama was at North Carolina. So on Wednesday, John Rothstein was the first to report the big ones. They became official Thursday, and this is what you need to know. If you love college basketball, we're getting great games on great, true home courts. Let's go ahead and dive into a few of the big ones as the marquee matchups that are worth discussing. We have UNC against Kentucky. We have Duke hosting the defending champion Florida Gators. We have Louisville traveling to Arkansas. Also, Will Wade and NC State going to Auburn. Let's go ahead and dive into a couple of these matchups. Listen, we're not going to do the 14-minute preview here in June, but I'll tell you, I think there's some intriguing matchups here that I want to discuss. The first one, the one that really, listen, I know that Florida Duke is probably the biggest on paper defending champ at Cameron Indoor, but I mean, let me just say it out loud. Carolina, Kentucky. Carolina versus Kentucky. And if you're a college basketball fan, it doesn't get much bigger than that. It feels big. You know, and it was funny, even on Thursday afternoon, Kentucky's social media team released some of the best moments in this rivalry. It's easy to forget they played an annual home and home for about 6 or 8 years, kind of the beginning of the Calipari era into about 2015 or so. They've obviously met in the NCAA tournament a bunch of times. We had the famous Anthony Davis block to seal a victory, John Wall going coast to coast to seal a victory. So this has been a fun matchup of the last 10 or 12 years. I'll say this too. I think it's going to be a really fun matchup in 2025 as well. First of all, huge brands, so that's awesome. Two, with the two teams, I think two teams in kind of different spots, and it's going to be an important game on both teams' schedules. For Kentucky, listen, I'll credit Mark Pope. You know, Mark Pope has said consistently, we're Kentucky, we want to be the best at everything. NIL, uniforms, transfer portal, we want to have the number one class. But he also said scheduling. He said, we want to have the number one schedule in America, and he is certainly living up to expectations. Not only Carolina at home, Indiana at home, Gonzaga on a neutral, Michigan State on a neutral. Who's the other big one? Oh, Louisville on the road, St. John's in Atlanta, Purdue as an exhibition game. If you're a season ticket holder at Rupp Arena, forget the SEC. You get Indiana, North Carolina, exhibition against Purdue. It ain't bad. But I'm just so excited to watch these two teams because, again, two different teams, two different programs at two different points in their trajectory. For Kentucky, clearly everything is trending up, okay? We don't have to spend 15 minutes breaking down their roster. We've done that plenty this offseason. We will have our college hoops offseason grade on Kentucky in the coming days. By the way, Kentucky fans, don't get mad at me. This game was scheduled after we recorded our offseason grade, so just keep that in mind. But I only bring it up because Kentucky trending up, coming off a Sweet 16, year one under Mark Pope. And what's interesting to me, listen, I have as the number 3 team in the country going into 2025, 2026. A nice blend of returnees, Otega Owe, Brandon Garrison, high upside transfers. And the thing that I keep going back to, they are just going to be so much bigger and more athletic than they were a season ago. Mo Diabate, I think, is going to be a breakout guy that everybody at Rupp loves. I think by this point, we hope to see Jaden Quaintance on the court. Jalen Lowe is awesome. You go on and on down the list. Who am I missing? Denzel Aberdeen is going to be really good. But then the counter to that is North Carolina. No, again, feels like two ships passing in the night. Mark Pope can do no wrong right now. Hubert Davis, there is a lot of pressure on him coming into 2025, 2026. Now, to be fair to him, this team, his roster is growing on me a little bit. Now that it's fully come together, I think there's a couple noteworthy things. We talked about Luka Bogovic a few weeks ago, the European wing, one of the top players in Europe, committed to Carolina. I thought he was kind of the player that brought all of the other pieces together. You liked the individual pieces, but you said, how do they all fit, right? You have Kyan Evans, transfer from Colorado State at point guard. I like Henry Visar, the center from Arizona. I really like Caleb Wilson. Remember, by the way, Caleb Wilson committed to North Carolina over Kentucky, and I saw him tweeting or Instagramming about this game, so you know that he is excited. But I'm just curious from the Carolina perspective because it feels like, again, we recorded our offseason grade before this game was announced. Good schedule, wouldn't call it an elite schedule, though. Michigan State in an MTE. You have Kansas at home. You have Ohio, but there's not a lot of big. This is a big one. And if Hubert Davis wins this one, I think it would obviously go a long way in, kind of getting some of the fan base back on his side. But intriguing matchup. Like I said, I think Carolina's roster is growing on me. I love Kentucky's roster. That is a game to be excited about. You know what else is something to be excited about? How about Florida at Duke? Okay, first of all, don't know. And, the ESPN conspiracy theorists can work their magic on this one. Duke, second straight year, they get a home game. I don't know. I'm not asking too many questions. I'm not, hitting up the Illuminati on that one. I'm just sitting there saying Duke got Auburn last year. Duke gets Florida this year. But I'll tell you this, man. How can you not be fired up about the defending champion Florida Gators going into Cameron Indoor Arena? Okay. First of all, thing about Florida that stands out to me. And, at some point I want to get Todd Golden on this show. I think he would do it. I don't want to get too much into it, but we've exchanged some texts here and there. I bring it up because last year, if you remember Florida, going into SEC play, they open in Rupp Arena against Kentucky, okay? But I bring it up because in going into that game, we didn't really know much about Florida. They had a little bit of a soft non-conference schedule. Now, turns out they were fine. Played Kentucky in one of the great regular season games we've seen in a long time. By the way, my nose is itching again. I know I keep saying it. It's annoying, whatever. But I bring it up because last year with Florida, I think that was a very big question about that team going into SEC play. Okay, they've got this great record. They were undefeated, but how good were they really? Well, this year, Todd Golden is leaving nothing to chance and nothing to question because he has a monster out-of-conference schedule. Opening night, he'll play Arizona in Vegas. Vegas, by the way, is Arizona South. It's basically, they call it McHale South because there's so many Arizona fans that show up every time they play in Vegas. They're playing UConn in the Jimmy V Classic. They call Madison Square Garden Store South because so many UConn fans show up. And Florida is playing at Duke in this matchup. And again, I think why Florida is playing more marquee games is because people want Florida in these games after winning a national championship just a few months ago. So excited about this one. I think the big thing, early test for Florida on the road. I like both of these teams. I think I have more questions about Florida maybe than some other people do. It's interesting. I look at all these way too early top 25s. I have my own opinions. I'm not saying anybody's opinion is right or wrong. I've seen him as high as like number 2 in some people's polls. I think that's a little bit high for me. Boogie Fland has to prove that he can consistently play winning basketball. Xavier Lee, by the way, very interesting, committed to Florida basically over Duke in the portal. But those big guys, Tommy Hawk, Alex Condon, Ruben Chinyelu, Micah Hanlockton, they'll be locked in and ready to go. And then with Duke, I'm just fascinated because this is a team that profiles a lot like last year's team. You have the star, 5-star National Player of the Year type player in Cam Boozer. You have basically size and athleticism all around him. And in some ways, Duke actually has more coming back next year than they did this year with Malik Brown, with Pat Ngongba, with Darren Harris. You go on and on down the list. Isaiah Evans, who kind of had his breakout game in this event last year against Auburn. So I'm just curious to see Duke. One thing I'll say about Duke, too, kind of like Mark Pope, kind of like Todd Golden, not afraid to schedule some big games. How about Duke's out-of-conference schedule? They are playing Texas the first week of the season. Remember, Texas, Sean Miller, they're not a pushover. They play Kansas, in the Champions Classic. They play Florida in this game. They play Arkansas on Thanksgiving Day. They play Michigan. They play Michigan State. Loaded schedule. Credit John Shire, man. I'll say this about him. I think he understands the responsibility of the Duke brand. He ain't ducking anybody. This one should be a good one. Mentioned that Duke is going to be playing Arkansas. How about those Arkansas Razorbacks hosting Louisville? Okay. So it's really interesting. I try to follow as much of this stuff as I can, fan bases, conversations, whatever. And I only bring it up because it felt like, last year, okay, Calipari gets the job, schedule comes together late. You're trying to piece it together. Very nice schedule. Baylor in Dallas. You had Michigan at Madison Square Garden. You had Illinois on Thanksgiving Day. I think a lot of Hog fans were like, well, we're going to get a big home game. Well, so far so good because this is a big one, okay? Louisville, in my opinion, is a top 10 team coming into next year. Louisville, in my opinion, is the favorite in the ACC. By the way, for those of you who follow the Torres on Hogs account, I think we tweeted out, our intern there tweeted out favorites in the SEC, Louisville. Yeah, he obviously meant ACC. It happens, whatever. Louisville's so good, man. And Pat Kelsey, listen, Pat Kelsey is just a terror. He doesn't back down from anybody. And he has a very, very, very good team. The guards are good. I think he might have the best backcourt in college basketball. Isaac McNeely, best three-point shooter available in the portal. Ryan Conwell, I've consistently said it. He's about 6'3", 6'4". If he was 6'7", he'd be in the NBA right now. Great college player coming over from Xavier. Adrian Woolley, I believe, is a guy with NBA upside. Then, oh, by the way, don't forget they also have Mikal Brown Jr. coming in as a freshman. Front court is really good. Pryor's back. Javon Hadley's back. So I really like this Louisville team, but I think this is also an interesting early season test for Arkansas. I've said it. I'm not backing down. I know I was high on Arkansas last year, and they kind of made me look silly there for a while. I really like this team, and I think the great thing about Arkansas, we're going to get to find out pretty early how good that team is because Calipari ain't ducking anybody this year, okay? This game at home in December. Worth noting there's a report that Baylor will play in Fayetteville. That is not confirmed yet as far as I know. But how about the other two big non-con games? Duke on Thanksgiving Day. Tell your family it's going to be a two-screen kind of night on Thanksgiving night. That is an 8 p.m. Eastern game on CBS. And then the one that got announced this week as well, Houston versus Arkansas, December 20th at Barclays Center, okay? So very interesting matchup there. The one thing I will tell you, I've been covering Calipari for a long time. When he puts together a schedule like this, it means to me that he feels like he has a team that can compete for a national championship because Houston is a preseason top 5 team, probably the Big 12 favorite. Duke is a preseason top 10 team. I have Louisville as the favorite, but it doesn't really matter. Louisville and Duke, in my opinion, are the two best teams in the ACC. Calipari ain't ducking anybody. This game's going to be awesome. Pat Kelsey. By the way, there's obviously the Calipari versus Louisville, angle. I know Calipari never faced Louisville with Pat Kelsey, but it's kind of interesting. Should be a fun one there. Arkansas and Louisville. By the way, Louisville's not ducking anybody in out of conference either. They will play a couple weeks after this one, Indiana in Indianapolis. They'll play Memphis. They'll play Kentucky early in the season. I can't wait for the season, man. There's so many good games. We still got a lot of college football, but I'm excited for the season as well. Really quickly, the only other one that really, really stood out to me, and I think part of it is just the lack of depth, in my opinion, in the ACC. There's just not a lot of great teams. It is NC State at Auburn, and I think, you look at it and say, NC State, why does that really matter? Will Wade walking into the jungle. Will Wade walking into an SEC basketball arena, and he's walking in with a team that I believe is a top 25 team. We've talked about him. We had Will Wade on the show. He talked about Darion Williams, the transfer from Texas Tech. Talked about some of the other guys that he has had on his team. I think it's a top 25 team in college basketball. They themselves have an interesting schedule at Auburn. They have Kansas at home. They get Duke and North Carolina at home in the only meetings between those two teams in ACC play. So really excited to watch that one. Don't want to spend too much more time on games that are now 5 months from now, but I think it's intriguing. A couple other ones, Miami, Ole Miss. Jay Lucas, I think, is going to have a better team than people realize. Virginia, Texas. Keep in mind, 2 first-year head coaches. I think Odom, the new Virginia coach, maybe has a little bit of a better team than maybe I've given him credit for. Sean Miller, as I've said, is a dog. By the way, on top of that, Syracuse, Tennessee, the old orange on orange game. Alabama versus Clemson. Alabama fans are furious. It feels like they play Clemson like 3 times a year every year. They played in the ACC-SEC Challenge a few years ago. They played Clemson in the NCAA tournament a few years ago. And it's, of course, quite the football rivalry. We'll see if it ever matches up on the basketball court. But ACC-SEC Challenge is out. I think there's a lot of reason for excitement. A lot of great games that I am very excited about. You know what I'm not excited about? The fact that John Rothstein had another report this week that Arkansas and Kentucky, the 2 teams that, in my opinion, draw the most eyeballs in the SEC. John Calipari only played once last year. Sounds like they're only playing once this year. We'll take a quick break, come back, talk about that. That's next. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, I have so many people that reach out and say, Torres, you give me hours and hours and hours of free content every day, every month, every year. What can I do to help support the show? Well, you want to support the show and look good in the process. Make sure to check out and support the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Some of you wondering, what can I get in that merch store, Torres? Well, Kentucky fans, we got our Mark Pope Hope and Pope t-shirts. That is right. Mark Pope, monster first year. Year 2 is going to be even better. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirt at AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. Arkansas fans, the big pig invasion is coming. It is here. John Calipari has things rocking. Get your big pig invasion tees. Again, AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. St. John's fans, we have our Big Rick Energy t-shirts. And if you're just a college basketball fan in general, guess what? Your March is for Day Drinking shirt. That is the shirt that you need year-round, but especially for the next NCAA tournament. You can order yours now. By the way, football fans, we got you covered too. Auburn fans, we already know the freeze warning has hit the plains. Make sure to get your freeze warning t-shirts. Also, Nebraska fans, new era, new rules, the t-shirt that you need before the start of this coming season. And oh, by the way, if you're a Colorado fan, if you're just a Coach Prime fan, we have our Dion shirts and hats, more of them than we know what to do with. So to check out the full line of Aaron Torres Media merch and also support the show, good news is we're going to have even more for the fall. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at AaronTorresOnline.com/merchandise. And for more information, you can always reach out at Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All right, everybody. I'm back. Could be back. So want to go ahead, keep the conversation going. By the way, chat's awfully quiet today. Hop in the chat, share your thoughts, get mad. People aren't angry enough here on the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel today. But we'll go ahead and get to some more scheduling stuff. As one of our listeners says, Chris Cox tells us that Arkansas has added a guy. We're going to talk about Elmire in just a minute. And there is an interesting football note as well that we'll get to. Before we get to it, though, you know what I got to do? I got to thank our friends. I got to thank our partners. I got to thank Callie Puffs, CalliePuffs.com. Okay, I've told you Callie Puff's story, but family-owned company not far from where I live. Joey, huge sports fan, was sitting on his couch one day. He said, I'm watching all these games. I need to be healthy. I need a snack that is both healthy but delicious. I need to get rid of this crap in the grocery aisle. No Doritos, no Fritos. I need a snack that is healthy but delicious. He came up with Callie Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. But the best part is, people, they taste delicious. You don't got to take my word for it. Try them out for yourself. For more information, visit CalliePuffs.com. That's CAULIPUFFS.com, CalliePuffs.com. You can also search Amazon.com as well. You can find them there. Try them. You'll like them. I got producer Matt hooked. I got many of the listeners of the Aaron Torres pod hooked, but you got to try them out for yourself. Search them out on Callie Puffs or CalliePuffs.com. With that said, let's go ahead and switch gears. We have obviously spent the first 15 or so minutes of this show talking about college hoop scheduling. There was a scheduling note that came out earlier this week that I cannot lie, Torres is not happy about, and it involves John Calipari and his former team, the Kentucky Wildcats. Okay, so listen, you know the story. Calipari leaves last year, and I think we all agree that going into last season, the most anticipated game of the season was John Calipari's return to Kentucky. But at the same time, and you don't got to ask me, all you got to do is generally hop in the chat on this show to know how much anger and vitriol there is between the two fans. By the way, that I'm not mocking anybody. I'm saying that as a good thing. True sports hate doesn't exist like it used to, but it feels like there is a real true rivalry between Arkansas and Kentucky. And a year ago, we only got one game between Kentucky and Arkansas. And I remember doing this exact same segment a year ago with the exact same complaint. Why is this not a home and home? This is the biggest matchup that the SEC could possibly put together as a home and home. They're only playing once. I was frustrated and I was disappointed. Well, I bring it up because schedules are coming out. We talked about ACC-SEC. By the way, like 2 weeks ago, the ACC put out the opponents for each team and each school. This week, the Big 12 just put out their opponents this week. And I've been told the SEC probably sometime next week will drop their full schedule. But I just bring it up because John Rothstein, yet again, he's all over it. Middle of the summer, John Rothstein doesn't care. He reported on Tuesday afternoon that Arkansas and Kentucky, again, I think the most intriguing game you could possibly have, will only be played once. I'll say this, at least the return game is at Bud Walton Arena as it should be, but this will not be a home and home. They will not play back and forth. As a matter of fact, I'll take it a step further. I think the SEC generally does a pretty good job of giving fans what they want. I think for the second straight year, this is a big whiff. And I said as much on social media on Tuesday when the Rothstein report came out. I said, quote, for a second year in a row, the SEC has botched the best pair of games and series that it could have in basketball. That's Arkansas and Kentucky. But hey, on a positive note, at least we'll get Kentucky Vandy twice and LSU Arkansas twice as well. Worth noting, by the way, SEC office was not happy about it. One of their, somebody in their office, got into the mentions and kind of referenced the fact that, the ratings were at an all-time high last year. He and I went back and forth. Now, he was a total pro about it. Probably more of a pro than I was, but not surprising there. We might actually have him on the show when the schedule comes out so he can talk through what goes through the SEC's process. But I still believe this was a colossal mistake. And let's dive into the SEC's blunder here because I think this is a screw-up of epic proportions, okay? So why is it a screw-up? First of all, like I said, this is the baddest of bad blood. Okay, listen, is it going to be the highest rated game? I don't know. Carolina Duke is probably going to always be the highest rated game. But in terms of interesting conversations, I don't think there's a more interesting conversation than a Hall of Fame coach leaving to go to another place. Now, it's even more interesting for two reasons. One, they only played once last year. And as you may or may not remember, Arkansas got the upper hand, right? So if anything, we got to see what that game looked like. And it was awesome. Credit to the folks at Rupp Arena. It was, I think, as intense. Now, I wasn't there, unfortunately. I get to a lot of games, but that was one I could not get to. But it was as intense of a building as I can ever remember in college basketball. And remember all the conversations that happened. Remember, it was the Saturday between the NFC and AFC championship games and the Super Bowl. So there was no football. It was the only thing on that night. And you could just feel the tension in the air. And the buildup was awesome, too. Remember a whole week of, should you boo John Calipari? Should you boo the players? What about this? What about that? Then you go into the game. John Calipari with a team that was 1-6 at SEC play at that time goes in, gets the win. And I think, in my opinion, it changed the entire Arkansas season. They go from, 1-6 to, I think, 9-9. They ended up in SEC play. They end up getting into the NCAA tournament. They end up getting into the Sweet 16. And I think the whole thing changed at Rupp. So you have that. And even in a year where Arkansas wasn't good at that time, it was an awesome game and an awesome atmosphere. And I'm sorry, if I'm the SEC office, I want that atmosphere again because I guarantee anytime Calipari walks into Rupp, it is going to be intense and it is going to be angry. And here's the other thing. Calipari ain't slowing down. Like, it'd be one thing. And look, I know enough about scheduling to know that a lot of these decisions get made based on who we think is going to be good. Listen, look at the ACC-SEC Challenge. They would not have given Arkansas Louisville if they did not think Arkansas was going to be good. They would not have given us Kentucky Carolina if they thought Kentucky was going to suck. So the programmers look at the way too early top 25s, no different than everybody else does. And they sat there and said, you know what? These two teams are going to be really good. Let's give them good matchups in the ACC-SEC Challenge. So why wouldn't they give it to us here? Because at the end of the day, it's not like, the projections have Arkansas to finish 13th in a 16-team SEC or Kentucky to finish 7th in a 16-team SEC. These are two teams that I think even the people that are critical of John Calipari think he's got a top 3, top 4 roster in the SEC. This should be the type of game that you get on a Saturday in the SEC tournament in the semifinals, 1 versus 2, 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3. So why not give it to us twice? It makes no sense. And I think there's a couple other variables as well, is that, again, it was an insane atmosphere. It is, by the way, it's a story that everyone can wrap their arms around, okay? And I think that's an important part of this as well. Listen, I love college basketball. I'm talking college basketball in June. There ain't very many people that are doing that right now. But I'm talking college basketball, and I love college basketball. You love college basketball. But I only say this because college basketball does struggle to get eyeballs and to get interest in November, December, January, February. Now, to its credit, again, I think they've done a great job of scheduling games that people want to see, all the games that we talked about, Kentucky, Carolina, Duke, Florida, Florida, UConn, BYU, BYU this team, Arizona, that. Like, they're giving us good games, Kansas, Carolina. But at the counter to that is you still need things that casual fans can wrap their arms around. And Calipari versus Kentucky is casual, is something that everyone can understand, everyone can appreciate, everybody can enjoy. And so it makes no sense. And then I think beyond that, the other thing that I keep thinking about is that it's great for college basketball. It's a matchup that genuinely creates interest, especially in league play. When you kind of get lost in the doldrums, it gets people excited. But you know who should be more mad than anybody at the SEC right now? It's the TV partners, right? Because TV partners are looking for games that get people to get eyeballs on TVs. And now listen, I know what people would say. They would say, oh, well, last year Auburn, Alabama was the highest rated game of the SEC season. And basically, you never know until the games are played what's going to rate well, what isn't, whatever, this, that, the other thing. The same time, though, think about how the SEC could position itself in the college basketball space this season. You have the first game at Bud Walton. I don't know, say what? That week between the conference championship games and the Super Bowl in football, when everybody's craving sports in February, late January. Most people are locked up in their house because it's cold as you know what outside. Give the first one that week. And then how about the second one, the return game at Rupp? I don't know, last weekend of the regular season, get everybody fired up for college basketball. Calipari going back into Rupp Arena, maybe with a really good team, maybe with a really bad team. Either way, you're going to be interested. It's going to get you fired up for March. So it makes no sense. And the last thing I would say is, don't tell me you can't make it work, because we found out after the fact that Kentucky is getting Florida twice this year, which is awesome. But the counter to that is, don't give us crappy games. And as I said in that tweet, when Rothstein put out his original tweet, we're going to get Kentucky Vandy twice. Cool. That's great for, the Kentucky fans that live in Nashville or closer to Nashville than they do Rupp Arena. For the rest of us, we don't want to watch Kentucky Vandy twice. I'd rather watch Calipari Kentucky twice. I'd rather watch Arkansas Kentucky twice. By the way, we're going to get 2 more Arkansas LSU games. That was an awesome football game back when Darren McFadden was on Arkansas and LSU had Les Miles. It ain't a basketball game anybody wants to watch. I'm here to tell you that. I don't even think LSU fans want to watch. I think LSU fans will be on tigerbait.com looking at recruiting football rankings, okay? So don't tell listen, I could go on and on. But don't tell me all this nonsense about, we can't do it. You can do it. And you've done it. And you've manipulated schedules to give us intriguing games in literally every sport. You can't give us Arkansas, Kentucky twice. What are we doing, SEC office? What are we doing? Like I said, the hope and the goal is to get an SEC official on the show next week to explain, because I think the full schedule, I'm hoping, would be, I think the whole schedule might be out next week. I don't know about dates, but I do think we'll get opponents, all that good stuff. All right. One more basketball topic that I do want to get to. That got me fired up. Got me fired up on a Thursday in June. I'm going on vacation next week. I should be nice and relaxed. I'm all fired up. But let's switch gears. Let's stay on Arkansas. Last basketball topic of the day. And let's talk the Razorbacks, because, I keep saying it's late June. Most rosters are set. We've started our college hoops offseason grades. If you've missed any of them, Louisville, UConn, Florida, Kentucky, North Carolina are coming up. BYU's coming up. But I've been hesitant to do anything on Arkansas because it feels like they were going to add one more player at some point, okay? It's been an interesting conversation in Arkansas circles. They basically have, in my opinion, prior to Thursday, I think about 10 dudes that you can go to war with. Now, you don't want all of them playing 38 minutes a game, but they got 10 guys that you can count on. But it felt like almost universally that every Arkansas fan was kind of sitting there saying, we need at least one more piece. And it's felt like that Arkansas fans felt like they needed a body in the front court. Remember last year, they basically had Big Z, Jonas Adu, and Trevin Brazile. Now, Adu Thero was kind of a 3-4, whatever. But when the team dealt with injuries, all of a sudden you're rail thin in the front court. Jonas Adu's hurt early. You don't have enough bodies. Trevin Brazile gets hurt early. You don't have enough bodies. Then those guys come back. Adu Thero gets hurt. And then obviously in SEC tournament play, Big Z gets hurt. And all of a sudden you're just down to basically no bodies. So I bring it up because it felt like Arkansas was going to add a body. It felt like it was going to come from the European ranks. And it's interesting because if you follow this on a day in, day out basis, it felt like the name that everybody was monitoring was a Russian big man named Igor Ryzov, okay? Well, Igor Ryzov may still come. Maybe by the time that you listen to this, he will be committed. But on Thursday, Arkansas did get a European big man, but it wasn't the big man that we thought. That is because 7-foot center from Bosnia, Elmir Dvacic. Look at producer Matt. I didn't even know there was a picture of him on the internet. I didn't know anything about him until 24 hours ago. But Elmir Dvacic commits to Arkansas, 7-foot center from Bosnia. Maybe the final piece. I'm excited. I liked Arkansas's roster without him. I liked him. I like it even more now. And what the heck? It's mid-June. Why wouldn't we do it? Arkansas is playing in Omaha this week, so I just got one question for you. Can anything stop the Big Pig invasion? Elmir Dvacic, can anything stop the Bosnian Big Pig invasion? That's right. Get your t-shirt, eratorresonline.com/merchandise. We're having a little fun. It's June. I drank too much coffee. I also, by the way, unrelated to anything, burned myself with the iron today. So this is like my MJ flu game right now. I'm all over the place. But when you're talking Bosnian big men in June, we're just flying by the seat of our pants right now. Okay, Elmir. Let's talk about Elmir, okay? First of all, let me say this because I got into a little brouhaha on social media. So Elmir Dvacic is coming over from Bosnia. He plays in the Adriatic League. And so I put out a pretty harmless tweet when he committed. I said, I think he's a nice addition, front court depth, blah, 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 this and that. And you know what happened from there? Immediately, a certain fan base that wasn't Arkansas's got in the mentions and said, Torres, he averaged 2 points per game. Stop kissing John Calipari's you know what. Well, listen, couple things here. And I said it, and I made some people mad when I said it. But first of all, context matters here, okay? 18-year-old big man playing in a professional league, the Adriatic League, overseas, okay? It has professionals from America. By the way, a lot of these really good European players that are coming overseas to the U.S., older, 21, 22, 23. Luka Bogovic, who's coming over to play for UNC, 22 years old. The kid going to Illinois, Mihailo Petrovic maybe, 21, 22 years old. So this kid is younger, and he only averaged 2 points a game. I get it, but he's playing in a league with grown men, okay? By the way, and I said this on social media, and everybody gets mad at me. I like Brandon Garrison from Kentucky, but he averaged 5 points per game. Doesn't mean he can't make a leap next year. Kentucky fans are telling me he might be the best big man in the SEC, and I'm not even arguing with them. I like Brandon Garrison, but the point I'm trying to make is guys get better year over year. Context matters, and he was playing in one of the toughest leagues in Europe last season. Oh, by the way, when he played for his national team in the U18 championships a few summers ago, 14 points, 10 rebounds per game, okay? But I think more than it, so when he plays against his contemporaries, when he plays against his peers, he's very good. But the important part is this. Nobody is saying that he was the piece that you needed to go from not even making the tournament to top 10 team. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the one thing Arkansas really needed, I believe more than anything else, was a backup 4-5 man, some bulk, a body that they can use. And this is maybe possibly the final piece. And it's not about you had to go get the best player in the world. You had to go get another big man for practices, for depth. It's worth noting he has multiple years of eligibility, we suspect. So this is a guy that could be on the roster for 2, 3, 4 years. So no, one thing I will not do. I'm not going to oversell it and say that he's the most important commitment that has ever happened in the history of college basketball. But what I am saying is he is an important commitment for this particular Arkansas team. Because I'll be real, I like this Arkansas team, and I ain't afraid to admit it, okay? I know that every time I say something, whatever. Arkansas made the Sweet 16 last year, but beyond that, I really like the pieces on this team, and I've said that since Carter Knox announced his return right at the NBA draft deadline. First of all, you got 4 guys that are coming back. You can't go solely off last year's stats again. But at the end of the year, the 4 players coming back were 4 of the most important players at Arkansas, and they were all playing at a really high level. We've gone over this. DJ Wagner, he was one of the best guards in the SEC over the last month of the season. That's not my opinion. That is a statistical fact. This was a guy that had 24 points against Mississippi State in a game that basically clinched their NCAA tournament berth in the final day of the regular season. He was great in the opener against Kansas in the NCAA. I mean, he was very good down the stretch for that team. 3rd-year junior in the SEC. Yeah, I'm going to bet on that guy. Beyond DJ Wagner, Carter Knox. Again, if you just look at the totality of the stats over the course of the season, he doesn't look like a guy that's, primed to be an all-SEC first-team guy, which I think is what he's going to be. But he had 20 against St. John's or 20 against Texas Tech in the Sweet 16, 15 against St. John's. If you can do that against those teams, you are due for a breakout this coming year. Billy Richmond was the leading scorer for Arkansas against St. John's in the round of 32. Trevin Brazil, double-double in the opening round of the NCAA tournament against Kansas. So 4 key players coming back. By the way, it's kind of interesting. I believe Arkansas statistically has the most returning production of anybody in the SEC returning this year, which is crazy. I call John Calipari Mr. Retention because that's never something you could say about him before, but it is something you could say about him now. So I like those 4 pieces. I like the 4 other freshman-ish first-year college basketball players coming in outside of Elmir Zvacic because Darius Acuff is a dog. Okay, Darius Acuff, I believe, probably the front runner for SEC player, for SEC freshman. Let me correct that. SEC freshman of the year. Nate Ament's going to be in the mix. Maybe a Jasper Johnson, maybe a Malachi Moreno. I'm trying to think of who the other guys are. Darius Acuff's a beast. Okay, he is a dog, and I think he's going to be really good. I think there's some guys, maybe aren't built to dominate in college basketball right away. I think he's going to be great. I think Malik Thomas is going to be great. By the way, if you've seen any of the stuff Arkansas social media team has put out, Malik Thomas looks like he's grown a little bit since, kind of the start of his senior year of high school. You add Isaiah Seeley, who I think is going to be pretty good. Kareem Rattal as well, another overseas player. Now you add Zvacic. Should mention, by the way, make sure you're following our Torres on the Hogs account, Torres on the Hogs, for all your late-breaking Arkansas news. And then on top of the 4 returnees, the now 5 newcomers, you also have 2 transfers, Malik Ewan and Nick Pringle, both big guys. And I thought it was interesting. I don't know if we talked about this, but Calipari talked about this at one point during kind of those media availabilities that he had kind of during that spring tour in May. He basically said point blank, he was like, it feels like his recruiting philosophy is now we're going to go with the high upside players, NBA prospects on the wings and the guard spots. And then down low, we're getting grown men. We're getting grown men who can throw people around. It was Jonas Adu last year. This year, it's Malik Ewan and Nick Pringle. And you look at this team, I think there's a lot of reason for excitement. Now, listen, it's not to say that the team is perfect. I would say 3-point shooting will not be a strength, okay? I don't think, by the way, it's going to be as big of a weakness as people think. End of the year, Trevin Brazil was shooting it well. Carter Knox was shooting it well. DJ Wagner was actually shooting it better than people realize. I think Acuff can be a pretty good 3-point shooter. But also, there's a couple variables. One, you don't have to be a great 3-point shooting team if you're a great offensive rebounding team. And that was, if you remember, because I remember talking about this, everybody last year when Arkansas struggled out of the gate, everyone was so caught up on their shooting. Oh, they don't have enough shooting. I said, part of the problem with having bad shooting, you also can't be a bad rebounding team. There are teams like, look at Buzz Williams at Texas A&M. Now, I hate the way he plays. I think it's football on hardwood, and it's awful. I don't think Arkansas or Calipari's teams have ever been that unwatchable. But you don't have to be a great 3-point shooting team if you're a great rebounding team, and Arkansas just wasn't last year. I think they will be this year. And then beyond that, again, you have 4 or 5 guys that can get to the rim, make plays anytime they want, and Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas and DJ Wagner and Carter Knox and Billy Richmond, etc. So to me, again, we're not going to oversell Elmir Zvacic as the biggest commitment in the history of basketball. But you look at this team now, and yes, you'd like a little bit more 3-point shooting, but you now have 11 dudes you can go to war with. You have, again, I think 3 guards that are really, really, really good. You have 2 wings that I believe will play in the NBA, certainly Carter Knox, maybe Billy Richmond. And then down low, how did Arkansas' season end? They couldn't get an offensive rebound against Texas Tech. That ain't going to happen with Malik Ewan. That ain't going to happen with Nick Pringle. And now you just have another body. And so when I said I think it's maybe the final piece, now we'll see. We'll talk about that in half a second. But when I said this is the final big piece, it's just another body. You need depth. You need physicality in this league. Listen, I hate to say it. This isn't football, but injuries are going to happen, okay? And so because of it, you need bodies. And this kid provides a body, depth. By the way, great for practicing. I remember we had Will Wade on during, the season with McNeese, and he was talking about, no, everyone's afraid to recruit 12, 13 guys now because of this, guys are going to transfer, whatever. But he's like, you need those bodies for practice, to have competitive practices. Well, say what you want about our boy Elmir Zvacic, the Bosnian Big Pig invasion, but that is a guy that is going to, at minimum, going to contribute at practice and be a guy that makes Malik Ewan better, makes Nick Pringle better. I remember, I'll give you an example. When Reed Potter, the 7'1" kid committed to Kentucky, comes from Miami of Ohio. Again, 10th, 11th, 12th man, but he's going to make Jaden Quaintance better. He's going to make Brandon Garrison better. And it's the same with Elmir Zvacic. So I like it. What I'll be most interested to see, is he the final piece? I've heard mixed things about whether they're still going after Igor Rizov. That is something that we should find out in the coming days. Igor Rizov plays in Russia. His season is officially done. So to me, the big question becomes, is this the final piece? I would tend to think, I don't know if you need another big guy. Again, Calipari was very vocal about last year not wanting to over-recruit, bury guys on the bench and have them transfer. I think he wants to have a roster where he has his guys, he has the backups, he can run practices, but he's nimble enough where he's not so backloaded where he's going to have 4 or 5 guys transfer out. But again, Elmir Zvacic commits to Arkansas. I think it's a solid pickup. And I'll say this, I've said it consistently. I believe Arkansas is right in the mix in the SEC title race. Kentucky, Arkansas, Florida, to me, are the clear top 3. I think Auburn is going to be there by the end. I think Tennessee's always good under Rick Barnes. But you look at this Arkansas team, I mean, they're not a great three-point shooting team, but everybody's got weaknesses. Kentucky's not a great three-point shooting team. Auburn's got an entirely new roster. Florida, again, Boogie Fland, he's got to prove it. So the point I'm trying to make is I think Arkansas is a contender. I think they're a contender for an SEC title. By the way, don't tell me, Cal's teams never compete for the. He finished second 2 years ago in his last year at Kentucky. Elmir Zvacic, that's your Elmir Zvacic take. I'm excited. The Bosnian Big Pig invasion is coming to Fayetteville. All right, so what we're going to do, take a quick break, come back. When we do, one final story, an interesting, in my opinion, football story, as the top uncommitted quarterback, he might be going to a very interesting locale. Where could that be? We'll explain it next. What's up, everybody? It's AT, and I've told you before, when I'm on the road, when I'm podcasting, sometimes you end up looking like a slob. Look at me, mismatched socks, I'm wearing shorts. What am I doing? The folks at FioBox said, Torres, let's get you some fresh gear to look better when you're on camera. Well, what do you think? This is all part of the spring collection for FioBox. These jeans, perfect when I want to go to games, casual, serious, business casual, you name it. Got the quarter zip. And oh, by the way, we got this perfect zip. This is the perfect spring, summer zip that you can wear when you're out with friends. Maybe it gets a little chilly. Maybe it's a little chilly in the morning. Perfect for all occasions. So this is what I need you to do. If you like what you see, and you should, what I need you to do is visit FioBox.com. That's FioBox.com, FIOBOC. By the way, FioBox has a special promo code for listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. Use promo code Torres and get 20% off your purchase. Thank you again to FioBox. By the way, make sure that you're following them on social media at FioBox, FIOBOC. Thank you, FioBox. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Final segment of the show. So good to be back. Again, quick scheduling note. We'll have a full show on Monday. We'll have a full show on Wednesday. By the way, Hog fans, if you're still in the chat, first of all, drop your questions in the chat. Phil Elson joined us on Monday to preview the College World Series, so make sure to check that out. Don't think, since I'm going on vacation next Thursday, that we'll have Phil on again before the end of the College World Series. Arkansas LSU is the headliner, to say the least, to open up things in Omaha. All right, so I've told you for weeks, like, we're going to start ramping up the college football coverage. There hasn't been much to talk about, but there is a very interesting recruiting story that has caught my attention over the last couple of days. Okay, and I've said this pretty consistently. We don't do a ton of college football recruiting on this show as opposed to college basketball. College basketball, one player can change everything. Boogie Flan takes Florida from a fringe top 25 team to a top 10 team. AJ DeBonsa changed everything at BYU. I think even Darren Peterson. What is Kansas without Darren Peterson? College football is different, right? It's not so much an individual player, but it's the totality, the full, you need 25, 30 guys in a class between high school and the portal, and you have to do it year over year over year over year to add bodies to the program to get to a point where you can compete with the Ohio States, the Georgias, the Texases, whatever. Well, that's it. Anytime something interesting happens, we talk about it. We certainly talked about it when Texas A&M signed the #1 class in the history of planet Earth. It didn't really work out, but it was still an interesting story. We talked about, remember when Jared Curtis, #1 quarterback at the time, visited with Bill Belichick? What did that mean? So whenever something interesting happens, we're going to talk about it. And there is something very interesting, in my opinion, going on right now. Ryder Lyons is the #1 uncommitted quarterback in all of high school football. And I bring it up because we've seen BYU make major recruiting moves in basketball with AJ DeBonsa. Well, he's uncommitted, recently cut his list. He is down to BYU and Oregon. And no, this isn't really like DeBonsa, but we're going to talk about it anyway. I think this kid might end up at BYU. So let's go ahead and dive in. So Ryder Lyons, as you can see at the bottom of your screen, #4 quarterback nationally, but he's the #1 uncommitted quarterback in all of high school football. He's from Folsom, California, which is like North Central California. But for most of his recruitment, he's been very high profile, 5-star. And for virtually all of his recruitment, it felt like USC was actually the team to beat in his recruitment. California kid, you can criticize Lincoln Riley for whatever, but the thing about Lincoln Riley is this: develops crap out of quarterbacks, right? Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Caleb Williams, Jalen Hurts, to say the least. Where would Jalen Hurts be if he hadn't done that 1 year at Oklahoma? So I bring it up because Lincoln Riley is a quarterback guru. This kid is from California. And oh, by the way, his brother is on the USC football roster. And so it felt like it was trending this way. But then late last week, something interesting happened. He had 3 visits set up, BYU, Oregon. He cuts the USC visit. And so I think everybody's trying to figure out why. And there's a pretty simple reason why, or at least it appears to be, okay? So backstory here. So if you follow high school football recruiting at all, you know that USC right now has the #1 recruiting class in America. Now, part of it is they have 28 commitments as we're recording here. I think everybody else is like in the 13 to 15 range. But also, over the course of the offseason, they hired a GM named Chad Bowen, who came in from Notre Dame. This is all going to come together, by the way. Just let me kind of set it up. But Chad Bowen, he's one of those super well-respected guys, great relationship guy, knows everybody. But he was at Notre Dame. He takes the job at USC. And shortly after he ends up at USC, he ends up flipping a quarterback, named Jonas Williams. Jonas Williams at the time was committed to Oregon. He's from Illinois originally. He's a high 4-star, was committed to Oregon, ends up at USC. So at the time, that did not feel like much. But then this recruitment with Ryder Lyons goes on. And as I said, last week, he makes an announcement that he is, I don't know if he announced it, but it was reported. He's canceling his USC visit. So that's one. And he's down to Oregon and BYU. But the more you dig into this, the more you start to put the tea leaves together, the more you start to realize this kid may actually end up at BYU, which I think is super cool for college football. If it happens, let's go ahead and dive into why it might be BYU and what it would mean overall. Why could it be BYU? First of all, this is important to note. Rider Lions is LDS. Listen, we've obviously talked a lot of BYU basketball on this show. AJ DeBonsa, some of the kids that have committed. Not everybody on the basketball team is LDS. By the way, not everybody on the football team is LDS either, but it certainly helps. It's certainly an in. And it helps with recruiting, right, for BYU. Now, they haven't gotten every big-time LDS prospect in football or basketball. I remember Jabari Parker a million years ago. LDS ends up at Duke, number 2 pick in basketball. Manti Te'o was LDS. He ends up going to Notre Dame. You know that story. But a lot of good LDS players. You know, Richie Saunders is there. There's a bunch. So the point I'm trying to make is that certainly doesn't hurt, and that's certainly a variable. This is where it gets really interesting to me, though, okay? So Oregon struggling to find a QB, okay? So as I mentioned, Jonas Williams was committed early. He ends up flipping to USC late in the or in February, excuse me. This, again, 4-star kid flips from Oregon to USC. So they lose him. Jared Curtis. Some people think he's the number 1 quarterback in America. Some people have Faison Brandon, who's committed to Tennessee. But Jared Curtis is down to Georgia and Oregon, commits to Georgia. So they're struggling to find a quarterback. They're bringing Rider Lions on campus this coming weekend. BYU next weekend is where he'll visit. Why is that noteworthy? It is because on Wednesday night, Oregon put out an offer to yet another quarterback. Producer Matt, you can pop that tweet. Bryson Beaver, great name. Not here to judge. Awesome name, though. Was committed to Boise State. Oregon offers him on Wednesday night. And Thursday, Bryson Beaver immediately decommits from Boise and now has an open recruitment. And so, again, let's put together the tea leaves. If you're committed to Boise State, maybe the best group of 5 program in college football, coming off of a college football playoff appearance, why would you decommit from Boise State unless you feel pretty good that there's a spot for you at Oregon? It's one thing for Oregon to offer, but they are hosting the top uncommitted quarterback this weekend, and you decide to decommit right before they're going to host the number 1 uncommitted quarterback in America? Because my thought process is, if I was advising him, if there's any doubt that Rider Lions, who you see on the screen, could commit to Oregon, just hold off. The offer's there. It's not going anywhere. It feels to me, though, like you're only decommitting unless you know this kid's coming, probably not committing, and then you come in and take that quarterback spot. Why would you want to be the second quarterback in a class? Doesn't really make sense. So you add it all up. Then from there, I'll just say this. There's a lot of buzz from a lot of people that cover recruiting 365 that BYU could be, not only could be a factor, but could be the final decision. Brandon Huffman, a guy who I have a great deal of respect for, he's a West Coast recruiting guru, works for 24/7 Sports. He has said pretty consistently, keep an eye on BYU, keep an eye on BYU, keep an eye on BYU. They're a dark horse. They're this, they're that. Well, it's down to 2, and BYU is very much in the mix. And so it'll be interesting because a couple things. One, for any BYU fan listening, one, make sure you're following our Torres on BYU page, Torres on BYU, for all your late-breaking BYU news. But 2, this should come to a head here in the next couple weeks, okay? Because Rider Lions has a visit to Oregon this weekend and then BYU next weekend, and then supposedly his recruitment is done. And so we should get an answer soon. I'm not promising anything, but it feels really good that everything is trending towards BYU. Now, what I'll say is this, is a couple things. Is 1, in recruiting, you never know. 2, because he's LDS, it's worth noting that he will not enroll for the 2026 season. He wouldn't enroll till 2027. So this is a kid that would commit now. All the other great freshmen would obviously enroll this, in January of this coming year. He'll enroll January of 2026. He'll enroll in January of 2026. But I bring it up, my little doggies here. Hold on one second here. We're in the middle of a show. She just came in to say hi. But so the point I'm trying to make is that he will commit in 2026 into 2027. So I'm all fried right here. I'm all frazzled. I'm so screwed right now. We'll have to edit this out a little bit before we get the clip up, Matt. But the point I'm trying to make is that he's not going to enroll right away. This is what I wanted to say. What I wanted to say is that I'm biased, and if you're an Oregon fan, you're going to get mad at me for saying this. I hope it happens. I'm just in favor of college football not becoming, in politics, we have a two-party system. I don't want college football to just become this, everything is in the Big Ten and the SEC. Like, they're the two best leagues. Nobody's arguing it. But I don't think it's good for college football if 100% of the power is found in those two leagues. I think it's much better if you have a contender like Clemson in the ACC. You have a contender like Miami in the ACC. You have a contender like Florida State in the ACC. You have a contender like Arizona State in the Big 12. And so BYU was very good last year. I actually thought they had more of an argument for the college football playoff than some of these SEC teams that couldn't stop whining. But the counter to that is you keep kind of building on last year and you hopefully put yourself in position to get this kid. So we'll see what happens. I would be very excited to see this kid in a BYU uniform. I think it'd be good for college football. It'd be good for the Big 12. Listen, the Big 12, I give Brett Yormark so much credit. I don't think they're going anywhere. But it'll be interesting to follow. Visiting Oregon this weekend, BYU next weekend. I'll be on a beach somewhere by the time that this kid potentially makes the decision after that BYU visit. But I just bring it up because I will be monitoring, and I think it'll be good for college football if he chooses BYU. All right. I think that's it for this episode of the Aaron Torres pod. I think that's it. Chat was fun today, but nothing too crazy. People weren't as angry as I thought they would be. Maybe it's June. Maybe the weather's nice. Maybe people just don't want to get mad. I don't know. But this is what I need you to do. We're still pumping out content full speed ahead here in the middle of June. There's not much going on, but we need your support. So what I need you to do, make sure you're subscribed to the Aaron Torres pod here. Make sure you're subscribed on Apple and Spotify. Producer Matt has pinned the Apple feed to the top of the thing, to the top of the chat. So make sure you're subscribed there as well. You want to go ahead and download a few episodes, just do your boy Torres a solid. That'd be great. Make sure to do that. Make sure you're subscribed on Apple, Spotify, and we're going to get out of here. Now, schedule for next week. We'll drop a college hoops offseason grade on Sunday. Monday, full show. Tuesday, we'll kind of see. Wednesday, full show as well. Then I'm off on vacation. But again, we will have college hoops offseason grades for you guys pretty much throughout the time that I'm gone. And then when I get back in early July, time to start talking football full speed ahead. So make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're subscribed on Apple, Spotify, all of that. By the way, if you missed the Kevin Young interview, make sure to subscribe to check that out as well. But tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. Time for me to go. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick. You F-head, unblock me, bro. I'll be back Sunday with the college hoops offseason grade. Monday with a full show. Appreciate your support of the Aaron Torres.